Amara had always imagined her wedding day as the happiest moment of her life. In Kumasi, the air was buzzing with excitement. Relatives had traveled from far and near. The compound was filled with music and laughter, and the smell of food drifted through the air. Everyone was preparing for the big day, and at the center of it all was Amara, the beautiful bride-to-be. She moved around with a smile that lit up every room, her joy so full that even strangers felt it. But not everyone shared in her happiness. Her elder sister, Nia, had carried jealousy in her heart for years. She had watched Amara grow from the quiet little sister into a confident young woman admired by many. Where Amara's light shone brighter, Nia's insecurities grew darker. She masked her feelings with forced smiles, but deep inside she couldn't bear the thought of her younger sister having what she never did: admiration, love, and now a dream wedding. On the night before the wedding, when Amara should have been resting peacefully, she walked into her room and froze. Her heart stopped. The white wedding gown she had carefully chosen, the one she had prayed in and imagined herself wearing down the aisle, lay in ruins. The delicate fabric was ripped apart, and worse, it was drenched in sticky red palm oil. The sight was so shocking that her knees almost gave way. Whispers spread quickly through the house. Gasps, questions, and suspicious glances filled the air. Who could do such a thing? And in that silence, betrayal hung heavy like smoke. Everyone thinking the same name, but too afraid to say it aloud: Nia. When Amara was a little girl, she always lived in the shadow of her elder sister. Nia was the firstborn, the one everyone looked up to, the one who spoke boldly at family gatherings and drew attention without even trying. When visitors came, they praised Nia's clever answers in school, her graceful way of carrying herself, her confidence. Amara, quiet and shy, would stand behind her mother's wrapper unnoticed. She didn't complain, but she felt invisible. Growing up, Amara often heard people compare them. Nia is so smart, she will go far, they would say, while looking at Amara with polite smiles, as if she was the extra child no one expected much from. Nia enjoyed the praise. She carried it like a crown. And in those years, she never imagined that the little sister hiding in the corner would ever outshine her. But time has a way of surprising everyone. As Amara grew, something changed. She blossomed slowly, like a flower that no one paid attention to until it suddenly bloomed brighter than the rest. By the time she entered university, she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her beauty was effortless, her smile warm and genuine. People began to notice her in a way that made Nia uncomfortable. The attention that once belonged only to Nia was now slipping away, piece by piece, into Amara's hand. What made it harder for Nia was that Amara didn't even seem to fight for it. She didn't boast, she didn't demand attention, yet people admired her. Friends praised her kindness, men admired her beauty, and relatives whispered that she would be the jewel of the family. Nia smiled on the outside, but inside her envy grew like a seed watered every day. When Amara announced her engagement to Kwame, the man who loved her deeply and respected her dreams, everyone celebrated. Nia clapped the loudest, but her heart burned in silence. She wished it were all a mistake, that somehow the wedding would fall apart. She never said it out loud, but the bitterness sat heavy in her chest. So when Amara's wedding dress was found torn and drenched in palm oil, it was as if the whispers of her hidden jealousy had finally taken flight. No one dared point a finger immediately, but suspicion hung in the room like a shadow. Mothers shook their heads, cousins exchanged knowing glances, and neighbors muttered under their breath. Amara, sitting on the edge of her bed with tears streaming down her face, could feel the weight of those unspoken words. She didn't want to believe it, but her heart whispered the truth she feared most. The sister she loved, the sister she trusted, might have been the one who wanted her dream to shatter. And that thought cut deeper than the torn dress. Amara sat on the cold floor, her hands clutching what was left of her ruined gown. The silky white fabric, once the symbol of her joy, was now stained and heavy with oil. She cried so hard her chest hurt, her sobs filling the quiet night. This was supposed to be her perfect day, the day she would walk down the aisle with all eyes on her, glowing with happiness. Instead, all she could see was the ugly mess in her hands and the sharp sting of betrayal in her heart. She thought of how she had prayed over this dress, how she had twirled in front of the mirror with it only a week ago, imagining herself as a bride. Now that dream seemed destroyed. "Why me?" she whispered through tears. "What did I do to deserve this?" Every thread of the dress seemed to mock her, reminding her that her special moment had been stolen before it even began. Outside her room, the compound was alive with noise. Whispers spread faster than fire. Neighbors who had come to help with the wedding preparations were already gossiping. "How can a bride have no dress on her wedding day?" one woman murmured. "This is a sign," another added. Children huddled together, repeating the story as if it were a fairy tale gone wrong. Some guests shook their heads with pity, while others leaned into the drama, curious about the scandal. In Kumasi, Weddings were not just family events, they were community spectacles. And now Amara's was on the edge of becoming a story told for years to come, not because of beauty, but because of shame. Her mother stood at the doorway, frozen between her two daughters. Her eyes were red, not just from anger but from deep sorrow. She looked at Amara, her youngest, broken and trembling with tears, and her heart ached. But when her gaze shifted to Nia, who stood in the corner with folded arms and a face too calm for the moment, her heart boiled with rage. "Tell me the truth, Nia," their mother demanded in a low voice. "Did you do this?" But Nia said nothing. She only looked away, lips pressed tight, as if silence could erase suspicion. The room grew heavier. Amara buried her face in her palms, unable to lift her eyes to her sister. The silence between them screamed louder than any words. It wasn't just the dress that was ruined, it was the bond of trust she thought they shared. Her mother wanted to protect both daughters, but the weight was unbearable. How could she choose between her children? She wanted to shake Nia in fury, yet she also wanted to hold Amara close and shield her from the pain. Torn between love and disappointment, she felt powerless. That night, as the compound finally quieted, one thing was clear to everyone. Amara's wedding was no longer just about love. It was now a story of betrayal, a wound that no dress could cover. Amara lay on her bed, her pillow wet with tears. She felt empty, as if the world had conspired to take her joy away. The ruined dress sat folded in the corner like a ghost haunting her. She had cried until her voice was gone, her eyes swollen, her heart heavy with shame. For a moment, she thought of calling the wedding off completely. How could she face her guests, her groom, the whole community, without a dress? That was when the door creaked open and Efua, her best friend since childhood, stepped in. Efua was not just any friend. She was the one who always saw the light in Amara, even when Amara could not see it herself. Efua was also a talented fashion designer, known for her bold ideas. She walked in with determination, not pity. Sitting beside Amara, she took her hand gently. "Listen to me," Efua said softly, her voice steady. "Queens are not made by dresses, but by courage. You are still a bride, with or without that gown. You are still Amara, and tomorrow is still your day." Amara looked at her, tears streaming down her cheeks. "But Efua, what will I wear? Everyone will laugh at me." "No," Efua shook her head firmly. "No one will laugh, because you will not walk out there broken. You will walk out there as a queen. And queens do not beg for crowns, they create them." Her words lit a small fire in Amara's chest. For the first time since the disaster, she sat up straighter. Efua's confidence was like a lifeline. Then, with a sudden spark in her eyes, Efua began to pace the room. "We don't need that Western dress," she said. "We have our own beauty, our own tradition. Let's make you a new look tonight. Something bold, something powerful. We'll use gold fabric, beads, and kente. You will not just look like a bride, you will look like royalty." Amara blinked in disbelief. "But there's no time. How can we do all that before morning?" Efua smiled, the kind of smile that always meant she had already made up her mind. "Watch me. We'll make time. I'll call some of the women to help. By sunrise, Kumasi will see a bride they will never forget." Hope began to seep back into Amara's heart. Together, they pulled out rolls of colorful fabric from Efua's bag, shimmering gold cloth that caught the lantern light, strings of beads, and folded kente with its rich patterns of red, green, and black. Amara touched the fabric with trembling fingers, imagining what could be. For hours, they sketched ideas on scraps of paper, cut pieces of fabric, and laid everything out on the floor. Other women from the neighborhood, hearing what happened, joined them. The room filled with sewing needles, laughter, determination, and a new kind of energy. By midnight, Amara was no longer the weeping bride with nothing to wear. She was part of a circle of women, weaving strength into every stitch. And for the first time since her heart had broken, she dared to believe that tomorrow, she would rise brighter than before. The night stretched long, but the room was alive with purpose. The women of the house gathered around Amara, their hands busy, their spirits united. Efua directed everything like a general leading her army. One woman held the kente steady, while another cut it. Others strung beads into necklaces and bracelets, their laughter softening the tension that had filled the compound hours before. Every stitch, every braid, every bead carried the quiet strength of women who refused to let jealousy destroy joy. Amara sat in the center of it all, watching as her friends and neighbors worked for her. She felt her sorrow slowly lift, replaced by something warmer, heavier, stronger. For the first time since she found her ruined gown, she felt surrounded by love, a love stitched into the gold fabric, woven into the bold reds and greens of the kente, whispered in the hands braiding her hair. Her hair was parted into neat sections, each braid wrapped with care and decorated with beads that clinked softly as the women worked. The braids framed her face, highlighting the glow that was slowly returning to her eyes. Around her waist, the kente was tied in layers, bold and regal, hugging her body like it was made just for her. Golden fabric was draped over her shoulders, catching the lantern light and scattering it across the walls like sunshine. The transformation was not just on the outside. With every braid, every layer of cloth, every string of beads, Amara felt a piece of her broken spirit being mended. The memory of her torn gown still lingered, but it no longer held power over her. She was no longer the crying bride on the floor. She was rising taller, brighter, like a phoenix out of ashes. Efua stepped back at one point, her eyes shining with pride. "Look at you, Amara," she whispered. "Do you see it now? You don't need a Western dress to be beautiful. You are a queen, and queens are crowned by their spirit, not their clothes." Amara touched the kent at her waist, her fingers trembling. She looked into the mirror and gasped softly. What stared back at her was not a broken girl, but a woman who had faced betrayal and stood stronger because of it. Her eyes glowed with determination. Her smile was gentle yet unshakable. Tears welled in her eyes again, but this time they were not from sadness. They were from pride, from gratitude, from a newfound strength. She whispered to herself, "Jealousy will not dim my light. I was born to shine, and tomorrow I will shine brighter than ever." The women around her clapped softly, as if sealing her vow with their hand. The room, once heavy with whispers of betrayal, now pulsed with energy and hope. By dawn, Amara was no longer simply a bride preparing for a wedding. She was a queen ready to claim her day, dressed not only in kent and beads but in resilience and grace. The sun rose gently over Kumasi, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. The compound was alive with music, the steady beat of drums echoing through the morning air. Guests dressed in their finest clothes filled the yard, fanning themselves and whispering about the night's shocking news. Everyone had heard about the ruined wedding dress. Some were curious, some pitied Amara, and some waited to see if she would even appear. A bride without a gown was unheard of. Then the drumming grew louder. The crowd turned toward the entrance. Children stopped playing and rushed forward, eager to see the bride. The air was heavy with expectation. And then she appeared. Amara stepped into the courtyard, wrapped in layers of bold, dazzling kent that glowed in the morning light. Gold fabric shimmered across her shoulders, beads glistened in her braids, and her skin radiated with confidence. She did not walk timidly. She glided, her head lifted high, her smile calm but powerful. For a moment, the compound fell completely silent. The whispers began again, but this time in awe. "Look at her," one woman gasped. "She looks like an Ashanti queen." Another nodded. "Even more beautiful than a white gown could ever make her." The drummers, caught up in the energy of the moment, pounded harder, their rhythms rolling like thunder. Children cheered, clapping their hands, some even dancing around her as if celebrating royalty. The women ululated, high-pitched cries of joy filling the air. Every step Amara took felt like a victory over the shame that had tried to destroy her. And then Kwame, her groom, saw her. He had been waiting anxiously, praying she would come despite the disaster. When his eyes landed on her, his breath caught. His heart swelled with pride. He had always known Amara was special, but seeing her in that moment, dressed in her heritage, glowing with courage, he felt like the luckiest man alive. His eyes watered, though he tried to hide it. "That's my bride," he whispered to himself, his voice breaking with emotion. When she finally reached him, he bowed his head slightly in respect, as if acknowledging her not just as his wife-to-be but as the queen she had become. The crowd erupted in cheers. Guests who had doubted her strength were now on their feet, clapping, singing, praising her transformation. What was meant to shame her had turned into the most breathtaking moment of the day. Amara felt the energy of the crowd wash over her. She no longer remembered the pain of her ruined gown. All she could feel was the warmth of her people, the steady beat of the drums, and the love in Kwame's eyes. She had survived betrayal, but she had entered her wedding stronger, brighter, untouchable. That morning, the wedding didn't just begin. It became a story, one that every guest would tell again and again, about the bride who walked in not broken, but crowned in glory. At the edge of the compound, Nia stood with her arms folded, her lips curled into a sneer. She had been waiting, watching, certain that without the ruined gown, Amara would be humiliated. In her mind, her younger sister would walk out in shame, maybe even cancel the wedding altogether. For once, Nia thought, the attention would not be on Amara. It would be on her, the strong, composed elder sister who would console the family in their disgrace. But when the drums grew louder and the crowd turned, Nia's smirk wavered. She saw Amara step into the courtyard, glowing in gold and kent, her head lifted high like royalty. The sun kissed her skin, the beads in her braids sparkled, and the fabric hugged her with power. The people gasped, then cheered, their admiration pouring out like a flood. The whispers of scandal were instantly erased, replaced by songs of praise. "She looks like a queen," someone cried. "I have never seen a bride so beautiful," another added. Nia's stomach twisted. The spotlight, the admiration, the awe, everything she had secretly wanted for herself, belonged to Amara. No one looked at Nia anymore. She was invisible in the same way she had once made Amara feel as a child. The irony stung, cutting deeper than any knife. Guests surrounded Amara, clapping, dancing, blessing her. The drummers beat harder, women ululated, children danced in circles. The energy in the compound rose higher and higher, and with every cheer, Nia's jealousy grew heavier, pressing against her chest. She clenched her fists so tightly her nails dug into her palm. Her heart raced as anger mixed with disbelief. How could this be? She had tried to ruin Amara. She had destroyed the gown. She had done everything to make her fail. And yet, here Amara was, more radiant than she could have ever imagined, celebrated as though she were a queen descended from the heavens. Nia tried to force another sneer, but it faltered. Her face drained of color. The laughter, the cheers, the glowing pride in Kwami's eyes, it all crashed against her like waves, drowning her in a sea of envy. She staggered slightly, clutching at her chest. A murmur rippled through the crowd as some noticed her sway. And then in one shocking moment, Nia collapsed. Gasps erupted. The drumming stopped suddenly. Guests rushed to her side, calling her name, fanning her with cloth, sprinkling water on her face. Children whispered, their eyes wide with fear. Did you see? Nia fell. But even in her fall, the crowd's attention slowly drifted back to Amara. The bride stood tall, calm, her golden fabric shining in the sunlight, her face steady with grace. While Nia lay on the ground, overwhelmed by her own bitterness, Amara remained the center of the moment, her light impossible to dim. For everyone watching, the scene was clear. Jealousy had tried to destroy a crown, but instead, it had destroyed itself. The courtyard had quieted after Nia's collapse, but tension hung thick in the air. Guests exchanged worried glances, unsure what had happened. Murmurs ran through the crowd, questions left unanswered. Then, from the edge of the gathering, a voice rang out. A neighbor, someone who had seen everything the night before. I saw her, the woman said, her voice shaking but firm. I saw Nia going into Amara's room with a jar of palm oil. She did it herself. A stunned silence followed. Heads turned, eyes widened, and gasps spread like wildfire. Some guests clutched their chests. Others whispered in disbelief, shaking their heads. Nia, still pale from her collapse, struggled to sit up, but the crowd's eyes were on her, sharp and accusing. Her plan, her jealousy, her betrayal, all were exposed in a single moment. Nia's face burned with shame. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. Her fists trembled, and she pressed them to her lips, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Friends who had once smiled at her now looked away, horrified. The whispers grew louder, fueled by shock and the bitter satisfaction of truth. She ruined her sister's wedding, someone muttered. How could she do this? Amara felt her heart tighten at the sight of her sister, humiliated in front of everyone. Anger and hurt surged through her. Part of her wanted to turn away, to leave Nia alone in her shame. Part of her wanted to yell, to make everyone understand the pain Nia had caused. But then she looked at the golden kente she wore, at the women around her who had lifted her, and at Kwami, whose eyes shone with love and pride. She realized something important. This moment could define her as a bride, but also as a person. Taking a deep breath, Amara stepped forward. Her eyes softened as they met Nia's. Without a word of blame, without a hint of revenge, she reached out her hand. Come, she said gently. Stand with me. Nia hesitated, staring at the extended hand. Her pride, her guilt, her envy battled inside her. But slowly she took it. The crowd watched in awe as the two sisters stood together, one radiant in her victory, the other humbled by her actions. Amara did not push Nia away. She did not gloat. Instead, she gave her sister a chance to stand up, to be seen not just as the one who betrayed, but as someone who could still belong. The whispers shifted from scandal to admiration. Look at her, one guest said softly. She is strong and kind. Another nodded. That is the way a true queen acts. For the first time since the wedding began, Amara felt fully in control, not over the dress or the gossip, or even the wedding itself, but over her own heart. She had been wronged, yet she chose grace. Nia's eyes brimmed with tears, and she lowered her head, ashamed but grateful. In that simple act of holding her sister's hand, Amara showed that power was not measured by revenge, but by courage, love, and forgiveness. And in that moment, the true strength of the bride shone brighter than any dress, any jewel, or any spotlight. The courtyard hummed with life and excitement as the ceremony continued. Guests leaned in closer, whispering among themselves, their voices full of admiration. Have you ever seen a bride so calm and strong? One woman asked. She doesn't just look beautiful, she carries herself with such grace, another replied. Every eye followed Amara, not just because of her radiant appearance, but because of the way she had handled the chaos, the betrayal, and the heartbreak. She had transformed pain into power, shame into pride, and envy into a lesson for everyone watching. Amara stood at the altar, the golden kente draped around her glowing in the sunlight. Beads shimmered in her braids, and the soft clatter of children cheering mingled with the steady beat of drum. Kwame held her hands tightly, his eyes filled with pride, love, and wonder. He had seen her at her lowest, when the dress was destroyed, and now he saw her at her highest, radiant and unshakable. The priest stepped forward, his voice carrying across the courtyard, calm and reverent. "Today," he began, "we witness not just the union of two hearts, but the triumph of character. A true queen is crowned by kindness, not revenge, by forgiveness, not anger, by courage, not fear." His eyes met Amara's, and she felt a warmth spread through her chest. Every struggle, every tear, every sleepless hour had led to this moment. As he continued, tying their hands together and offering blessings, the crowd watched in awe. People spoke quietly to one another about her strength. They noticed how she had chosen to lift her sister instead of tearing her down, how she had turned humiliation into a story of resilience. Mothers nodded to their daughters, pointing to Amara as an example of what it meant to carry oneself with dignity. Friends whispered to friends, wondering if they could ever find that same quiet bravery. Amara felt a deep calm settle over her. She wasn't just a bride in a stunning gown. She was a woman who had faced betrayal and refused to be broken by it. Her heart felt lighter, her spirit fuller. She realized that winning wasn't about being the most admired or the most celebrated. It was about standing tall even when the world tried to push her down. It was about showing the people she loved, and herself, that strength and grace could exist together. When the priest finally pronounced them husband and wife, cheers erupted through the crowd. Children clapped, drums pounded in celebration, and the women ululated, carrying the joy into every corner of the compound. Kwame kissed Amara's hand gently, and she smiled back, knowing that today she had not only won in beauty but in character. Guests continued to whisper, some shaking their heads in amazement, others smiling with inspiration. And as Amara and Kwame walked down the aisle together, every step felt like a crown settling into place, one made of love, courage, and grace. Months passed, and Amara's wedding became the talk of more than just Kumasi. Photos of her glowing in gold and Kent fabric spread across social media, shared by friends, relatives, and strangers who had heard of her story. Brides from across Africa began asking for Kent-inspired gowns, wanting the same blend of tradition, courage, and beauty. Articles called her a symbol of resilience, while videos of her walking down the aisle in confidence went viral, inspiring countless young women who had faced their own struggles. Amara and Kwame, moved by how much their story had touched others, decided to do more than celebrate their love. They wanted to give back. They opened a women's empowerment center in the heart of Kumasi, a place where women could learn skills, build confidence, and support one another. Sewing classes, leadership workshops, mentorship programs, everything was designed to help women rise, just as Amara had. The center became a hub of energy and hope, where stories of triumph over jealousy, fear, and hardship were shared freely, and where girls learned that their strength was theirs to claim. Even in her busy days running the center, Amara never forgot the lesson she had learned the night her wedding dress was ruined. She often told the women who came to her, "Even when others try to ruin your crown, wear it higher, because queens are not made, they rise." Those words became a motto for the center, a reminder that true power comes not from a dress, a title, or applause, but from courage, grace, and resilience. Amara's story, her wedding, and her courage became a legacy. She had turned betrayal into beauty, jealousy into motivation, and a single day of heartbreak into a lifetime of inspiration. Her crown was never just the Kent she wore. It was the strength she carried, and it would continue to shine for generations.